Revenge films.
In my husband's household, my father-in-law already passed away, and my mother-in-law is very busy with her hobby. Looking on the bright side, she is a very good mother-in-law, who is not just so interested in me at all. However, my uncle-in-law is an evil man. The uncle-in-law of mine has a terrible upbringing. When he was still young, his mother passed away. He was still 7 years old at the time. His older sister is now my mother-in-law and was in high school. Not long after my grandfather-in-law passed away, my grandfather-in-law married another woman. Their stepmother was a much younger woman. Then, a few months later, my mother-in-law and uncle-in-law's stepsister was born. Because of that, my uncle-in-law was neglected by his father. Despite that home environment, my uncle-in-law grew up very well without straying down the wrong path until he felt less and less loved and felt more and more empty. As he grew older without emotional support from his parents, his heart felt like an abyss of sadness. That feeling grew stronger and stronger until he ended up abusing people. Whenever he sees a woman who are married and having children, he sees them as weak people and abuses them. Maybe it's because they reminded him of his stepmother who never cared for him. The first target he had was his stepsister. After his stepsister got married and she gave birth to a healthy baby not long after, my uncle-in-law harassed his stepsister, including the niece and nephews. Because of that, one of the children was diagnosed with depression and the other became a shut-in. My uncle-in-law's stepsister's husband declared cutting off all relations with him. I don't know the details, but from what I heard, my uncle-in-law had a raging hatred towards his stepsister. According to him, his stepsister didn't have a pretty face, so he shouted,
"There's one more ugly baby on this earth because an ugly woman gave birth to one! You have no worth living on this planet!"
He said something along those lines. My uncle-in-law's stepsister was not only one who was harassed. His stepsister's daughter was also bullied in school for her looks by the other kids. Because of that, she became mentally ill. His sister-in-law's husband became furious when he found out about this, and he declared to break off ties with his uncle-in-law. But thanks to that, I heard that his stepsister is now recuperating by going to a psychosomatic clinic. Then, the next target was me, but my husband and mother-in-law had protected me from my uncle-in-law. They made sure that my uncle-in-law didn't harm me or do anything to me while I was pregnant with our firstborn. A few months passed and I was safely able to give birth to a healthy baby. My husband and I were overjoyed as well as my mother-in-law. We all felt happy and relieved. However, the moment my husband and mother-in-law let their guards down, what I mean by letting their guard down is that when my uncle-in-law came to visit us with gifts in hand to congratulate us on the birth of our baby, both my husband and mother-in-law thought that there was no need to worry about him anymore. So they let him inside the house where I was with my baby. At the time, I was living with my parents-in-law's house, so my uncle-in-law walked into the room and brought alcohol with him. He knew that I was breastfeeding my baby, but he forced me to drink alcohol. Of course, I can't drink alcohol when I'm still breastfeeding my baby, so I declined his offer to drink, but my uncle-in-law didn't like that response, so he became furious and enraged. However, as for my husband and mother-in-law, they were just staring at me but not doing anything to help me. Apparently, they expected me to handle the situation smoothly without a hitch. My father-in-law was shameless. He even laughed and said that I aged drastically after giving birth. His loud, evil voice booming across the room. He continued to be persistent in making me drink alcohol. He didn't stop at that. He was also persistent in begging me to cradle the baby, so I decided to make him cradle the baby for a short time. But when I tried to take the baby back, he shook it until the baby cried, so I shouted, "What in the world are you doing? Stop that! What are you doing to my daughter?" I forced myself to take the baby away from my uncle-in-law's arms, to which he got angry at me. Most people would probably be scared at this moment, but unfortunately for my uncle-in-law, I'm not the weak type to just cry just because of it. I've heard plenty of things about my uncle-in-law from friends and neighbors. So flipped out and said to his face, "I see it now. I now understand why your wife took her own life, because she was very depressed and lonely because of a shut-in, because your child broke off ties with you. I know why you also treated your stepsister cruelly. You're broken beyond repair." Hearing me say that, my uncle-in-law, mother-in-law, and my husband all became dumbfounded and turned pale. My uncle-in-law made an expression on his face as if to ask me why I knew about all this. Actually, I've known this information since before, that my uncle-in-law's wife took her own life because of severe depression. As for his eldest son, he is already in his 30s, but he's a shut-in. His daughters could not forgive him for driving their mother to severe depression. They broke off all ties with him. Both daughters left home and never came back. After pointing those things out, my uncle-in-law shouted,
"Shut up! That has nothing to do with this!"
He went wild, but I never backed down. I responded, "Of course, it has everything to do with this. I don't want to get involved with someone who broke up his own family." Both my husband and mother-in-law were in shock when they heard me say that. But it wasn't funny for me to be involved with someone abusive and reckless. I was prepared to divorce my husband, if that means I never have to see my uncle-in-law ever again. Apparently, my uncle-in-law never thought that I would have a counterattack, so he was very shocked and I screamed at him. Maybe it was because of his older sister and the people around him spoiled him to do whatever he wanted to do and say, because of what he went through when he was young. But he was very shocked when someone finally told him frankly to his face that what he had been doing up to all this time was wrong. After that, my uncle-in-law grumpily said,
I'll go home now.
He said that as he marched out of the door. I then said to my husband, if you won't break ties with that man, I don't mind getting a divorce. I never want to see that bastard's face ever again. So don't you ever force me to see him again. Of course, I will never let you meet our daughter ever again. I threatened to divorce my husband, so he agreed to break off ties with his uncle. Observing from across the room and hearing everything I said, my mother-in-law shakily said, well, there's no need for you to break off ties with him. That's a bit too extreme, isn't it? He's my son's uncle, so he's family to him after all. My mother-in-law defended her younger brother. I think my mother-in-law just wanted to believe in my uncle-in-law, and my husband wanted me to be on good terms with all the members of his family as possible. But I couldn't stand having my child around that evil man. So are you saying that if something bad happens, you will take responsibility for it? That bastard tried to force alcohol into me today. I'm still breastfeeding my baby, for heaven's sake. If I drink even a drop of alcohol, it would affect my breast milk and affect the baby. Despite seeing that, you didn't even bother to step up for me. I thought that you would be able to handle it well. It's your responsibility to tell your family member to stop doing such reckless behavior. He'll listen to you more than he ever will listen to me. I thought from the bottom of my heart that this is what happens when people get very spoiled by their family and friends around them. I'm sure his childhood upbringing has something to do with his current behavior, but the environment that allowed him to do and say whatever he wanted to also affects his current and future behaviors. As for my husband, he was never abused verbally or physically by his uncle. He's always thought that his uncle was a strange and dangerous man, but deep down in his heart, he couldn't believe that it was possible for someone to turn out this cruel. The reason why he didn't target my husband is because my uncle-in-law was only targeting those who were in lower status and those that had a lower rank than him. My husband is the son of my uncle-in-law's sister. I think that's why he didn't abuse or bully him. But I'm a woman and I'm a mother now, so even though I'm a wife of his nephew, I became his target. But despite all that, my mother-in-law persisted and told me that I should forgive my uncle-in-law because of how difficult of a childhood he had. Please forgive him, he's just a pitiful child. She begged me to forgive him, but I think that's exactly the reason why my uncle-in-law became a twisted person. I'm sure that my uncle-in-law is the reason why his wife became severely depressed. I do feel bad for my uncle-in-law's childhood, but that's not a reason for him to ruin someone's life. To even ruin one's wife's life is unbelievable. He also ruined the son who is now shut-in and away from society. Just because he had a pitiful childhood, that doesn't mean he should be allowed to destroy the lives of other people. It's not right, much less at the expense of the children. If I didn't do anything at the time, I'm sure he would have done something to my child. My mother-in-law still felt sorry for her younger brother, and she asked me to forgive him despite knowing this. I don't think my mother-in-law will ever understand me and the situation that she put me in. So I asked my husband to move out of the house with me. My mother-in-law wanted to see her grandchild's face every day, so she wanted us to live together with her. But my uncle-in-law shook my baby. My mother-in-law and my husband just stood there and did nothing to stop him. It's scary to be in an environment with people who won't help me in an emergency. After that, I immediately searched for an apartment and I moved into a place that was located a little bit far away from my parents-in-law's house. Of course, I will never tell them about my new address, and I even told my husband that I would not go to my mother-in-law's house ever again. If she wanted to see her grandchild, we will have to agree on a place and she could meet our child only during the time. I would never let my mother-in-law inside of our new residence. I don't want her to push me to have mercy and accept my uncle-in-law's behavior after all. As for my uncle-in-law, he was in severe shock when I talked back to him. Rumors say that he is now shut-in, but I don't care at all. Many people got severe depression and became a shut-in because of him, so I think it's right that he experienced it firsthand. This is a story about the time that I got back at my mother-in-law who was outrageously rude to me over a cup of ramen. My name is Jessica and I met my husband Kevin when we were in college. We dated for about 4 years and then we got married. At that time, we had both have left our small hometowns and moved into the big city for college. After a few years of marriage, we started talking about having kids. In that case, we wanted to move somewhere with a little more space. After I gave birth to my son, we decided to move back to my husband's hometown, and he changed his jobs to an office there as well. Before Kevin and I got married, I met his parents a number of times. However, I could count on one hand how many times I interacted with her, so I didn't have an opportunity to fully understand just how rude of a person she was. As soon as we moved into the same neighborhood as Kevin's parents, that was when I found out what a pain she was. After my husband went to work at his office and I sent the kids off to preschool, I would go to work and work 3 days a week at the local grocery store part-time. When my mother-in-law found out about that, she was pestering me to tell her my shift schedule. However, I knew if I told her when I would be home, she would definitely suddenly barge into the house, so I tried to avoid the question for as long as possible. But then my mother-in-law started coming over every single day. If she saw that I had finished my shift and was already home with my car parked out front, she would then ring the doorbell incessantly and barge into the house. In the beginning, I would answer the door, but as soon as she would come into the house, she would immediately start berating me. She would nag me about the way I was doing laundry, or if there was one single dirty plate in the kitchen. She would point out, and then she would start harassing me about what kind of mess I was. and about what kind of meals I was cooking at home. It was always just a shower of insults, and I hated it for a long time. I tried to pretend like I wasn't home, but then if I ignored her, she would see my car parked in the front, and she would come home at the front door and start yelling, "Jessica, open up!" And she would start banging on the front door. Unfortunately, to make matters worse, we lived on the first floor of an apartment building, and then she would come around and peek through the window. When she saw me, she would yell even louder, "I knew it! You are in there! You need to open up right now!" That window did have a curtain over it, but unfortunately, there was always a small gap that she would be able to peek inside. When I looked up, I saw my mother-in-law's glaring eye into the apartment, and it was terrifying. I thought about talking to my husband about it, but judging by my mother-in-law's personality on a regular basis, if I did that, she'd probably go into hystericals. And for the time being, I was still able to tolerate it, so I chose not to cause any problems. That was until one day I sent my husband off to work as usual and dropped the children off at preschool like any other day. I finished my shift at the grocery store and then I got home. Because I had been busy all day, I still hadn't had lunch, and so I thought about eating something real quick at home. But that was when I realized that I forgot to cook enough rice, and I started looking around the pantry to see if there's anything that I could eat quickly. When I opened the drawer, I found a cup of instant noodles and that my husband had stored away in case of an emergency. By that time, it was already 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so I thought it was a little snack to hold me over until dinner. Just as I was about to start eating it, I heard the sound of a doorbell. I already had a terrible feeling wash over me, but just as I expected, standing there was my mother-in-law. "I know you're in there, Jessica! Hurry up and open up!" She was yelling outside. Because her neighbors were nearby, I didn't want her to cause a scene, so I opened the front door. My mother-in-law was grinning from ear to ear as she came into my house. And as usual, she started looking for bones to pick. And that was when she walked into the living room and saw my cup of instant noodles that I was just about to eat. And then she suddenly raised her voice at me. "Are you kidding me? Is this what you're feeding your husband every single day? I can't believe it! This isn't real food!" That was already rude enough to people who make cup noodles. Instant noodles are so delicious. And in the first place, it's not like anybody in our family was eating this every single day. And yet my mother-in-law had already made up in her narrative mind and to continue to come at me. "I had a feeling that you weren't cooking anything decent at home, and it looks like I was right. You were just buying things like this and slacking off, weren't you? You know, you're a failure as a housewife with this. Oh my, I feel so bad for my sweet son and my poor little grandchildren." Without even trying to listen to a single thing that I tried to say, she continued to ramble on. I was starting to get fed up with it, but then, without thinking, I had reached into the cup noodle and I placed one of the pieces of food onto my mother-in-law's forehead. As soon as I did that, my mother-in-law raised her voice again. "Yeah, what are you doing?" And she was screaming, so this time I reached into the cup and pulled out a different ingredient, and then my mother-in-law went running out of the house. To be honest, by the time I tried to eat the cup noodles, it was already pretty cold. And she had been talking for so long that I can't imagine there was any fear of her actually getting burned. But just in case, I wanted to make sure I covered my tracks, so when my cousin came home from work, I told him everything that happened that day. Of course, I did so by explaining everything that happened until that very moment, and I was being honest with him about the whole incident. I thought that he might get angry for me for crossing a line, but my husband's reaction was completely unexpected. He started to crack up.
Wow, that's a masterpiece. I wish I could have seen my mom's face when you did that to her. That's hilarious.
You're not mad?
Why would I be mad? It's obvious that my mom was in the wrong. I know that I haven't been able to help out much with the chores or with the kids because I'm always at work. And I know how hard you were working while also having a part-time job to take care of everything at home. My mom is the one I should be mad at for harassing you like that.
I'm not sure about this, but I have a feeling that your mom might try to contact you about it.
If she does, then that's perfect. Don't worry. There's nothing you need to worry about, Jessica. I'll handle it. If anything, I'm sorry that I had no idea that my mom was harassing you like that all this time. I'm going to take care of it, so you can leave it to me.
I was expecting things to turn out for the worse by my husband yelling about what happened. But that wasn't the case at all. Instead, my husband kindly took my side and apologized for everything that his mother had done to me until then. And he told me that he was going to talk to her so that nothing like this would ever happen again. I was happy to hear that my husband said that, but I was also worried whether it was going to work. But then, from that day forward, my mother-in-law completely stopped showing up at my door. Not long after that, I made sure to tell my husband that his mother really did stop coming over, and after I thanked him for it, I asked him how he did it. It turns out that Kevin had told his father everything that I had gone through, and that his mother was doing. And at that time, he gave his father the exact examples that I had told him, how she was nagging about how I cleaned the house, insulting my cooking, and how she harassed me for having 1 cup of instant noodles at home. When Kevin's father heard this, apparently he was furious. That was when I found out for the first time that apparently my mother-in-law was not good at cooking at all. Ever since I got married to Kevin, I had never actually tried his mother's cooking, so I couldn't say for myself. But the reason why there was a cup of instant noodles home in the first place was because his mother's cooking was so awful that he wouldn't be able to eat it, and he started eating cup noodles instead. Over the years, my husband developed a love for instant noodles, and since he moved out, he had no longer had his mother's food. As for his father, apparently he was trying to tolerate as much as he could. But sometimes there would be dishes served that were completely inedible. Anytime it was too terrible to eat, his father would also eat cup noodles at home, which meant the reason why Kevin had started eating cup noodles in the first place was actually his mother's fault. And yet, even though she couldn't cook well herself, she was trying to come after me for my cooking, and Kevin's father was furious. When I asked Kevin what was wrong with his mother's cooking to begin with, he explained to me that she didn't know the balance of flavors. At the same time, apparently she didn't like cooking recipes, so every single meal would turn out a disaster. For example, even if a regular housewife like me tried to create an extremely fancy sauce, I wouldn't know how much of what ingredient to mix in to make it taste good. So I would make sure to follow the recipe. However, even though Kevin's mother had no idea how to give flavor to any regular cooking, she would refuse to look at any recipes and just chuck in random amounts of random ingredients. Kevin said that both he and his father have tried to tell her countless times that she should just follow the recipe, but apparently she refuses to make things decided by other people. I almost find this stubbornness amazing. For the record, apparently Kevin's father would try to add his own condiments to make the food more eligible, but Kevin said that he gave up pretty early on. However, when he was younger, he couldn't afford to eat out every meal, and that he just started eating all kinds of cup noodles and he got hooked on finding his flavor. But I can understand, especially where there are so many new products being developed all the time, and it's perfect for a midnight snack. But that reminds me, the first time my husband tried my cooking, I remember how moved he was and he kept telling me over and over again.
This is the first time I've ever had such delicious homemade cooking.
I was happy, but now I understand why. I also remember once when I saw my father-in-law having a cup of instant noodles at the dining table of their house, and now I understand. After this incident, Kevin's father made it very clear to his mother that she was a terrible cook, and because he yelled at her that she needs to know her place and stop harassing me, he cornered her into tears. As a result of that, she didn't have to come into my house anymore, and I heard that she stays at home all day now. But for a housewife, I can imagine that it's devastating to hear your family tell you that your cooking is terrible, especially after you've been cooking for them all these years. Kevin said that his father also told her harshly not to ever speak to us about our lifestyle or the way I maintain the house, and that I don't need to worry anymore about her barging into our house. If she hadn't harassed me in the first place, and it never would have fired back into her like this. But she really did this all to herself. Take that!
I have a daughter and a wife whom I love so much. We used to be a typical family like any other. However, one day, my wife cheated on me. What's worse is that the man she cheated with is one of the fathers in kindergarten, and his name is Prick. The reason why I found out that my wife cheated on me is, well, it was when we went on a family vacation. It was a time when I was very busy at work. It was a very difficult time for me. But my wife's birthday and our daughter's day were just around the corner, so I decided to take a few days off work. We stayed at a hotel hot spring and spa. After taking a bath, I happened to see a notification from my wife's phone, and I saw Prick's name on the screen. I only saw it for a moment, but the message was not related to the kindergarten, nor was it about the children at all. Frankly, I wasn't happy to see what I saw, but I didn't want to fight with my wife at the hotel during the family vacation, so I went to smoke and tried calling my friend to talk about what I just saw. I think I was trying to calm myself down by talking to my friend. I told him everything from what I saw and how I felt seeing that message. Then my friend replied, "What you're feeling is just normal. Of course you'll feel that way. The man might be just the father of one of the kids in kindergarten, but they're of the opposite sex and they're both married. Don't you think it's strange for them to be talking about private matters?" I guess you're right. I mean, it's not normal to send messages like that to someone who's married, right? If there's something important to talk about, he should just pass it on to his wife to tell her. The more my friend told me this and that, the more anxious and worried I became. That's why I went back to the room, and after our daughter went to bed, I asked my wife to honestly tell me why she was in contact with that man. No matter what the reason was, I told her that I didn't want her contacting him again, and I also told her that it was strange to be messaging each other. So my wife gave me a menacing look and said,
What? I mean, why were you spying on my phone?
She was furious and marched to the children's room and sulked in bed. But the next day, my wife made a complete 180 and apologized to me for the attitude she showed yesterday.
I'm sorry about yesterday. Don't worry, I promise I won't contact him anymore.
What I saw was the only message, so I decided to forgive my wife. However, not long after she promised not to contact him anymore, I found out that my wife had broken her promise. She said that there was a kindergarten meeting, so she would arrive home late. But I found a receipt that I'd never seen before. That's why I decided to set a trap for my wife. I asked her first if she was in contact with Prick, and she said that she wasn't anymore. So I blocked Prick from my wife's phone, and I told myself that it was just right for me to do that. Then after a while, my wife finally noticed that the man's number was gone from her contacts, so she marched to the kitchen and confronted me.
Mason, what in the world were you thinking? You deleted Prick's phone number from my contacts, didn't you?
Yeah, because you promised me that you wouldn't contact Prick anymore. And so, you weren't contacting him anymore after that, right?
What? You're not making any sense at all! You're the worst!
She's the only one who wasn't making sense of this conversation. However, the real deal of the trap that I set had just started. My wife didn't have a Gmail account, so I told her that if she had something important to message Prick, she could contact him using the Gmail that I made. However, what she didn't know was that the Gmail account was actually mine, so I was able to check the messages anytime. And what's more, is that I would get notified whenever she received a message. So I dangled a carrot in front of my wife, and I patiently waited for my wife to finally grab it. Then to my surprise, she immediately contacted that man. Of course, my phone notified me right away. She sent a message saying that she couldn't use the messaging app because the contact number was deleted, but she could use Gmail to contact him. Since they had the tool for messaging, she wanted to continue seeing him like they always did. I was disgusted by the overly sweet messages that they sent each other. My wife knew that I knew that she used Gmail, so I knew that my wife would delete their conversation for sure. That's why I immediately took a screenshot of their messages. Just as I predicted, my wife deleted all the sweet messages that she and that man had. But every time I got a notification from my phone, I took a screenshot of the messages. So the pieces of evidence piled up. Then I read a message about them meeting up at a hotel, so I secretly tailed them to go to the hotel and took pictures for evidence. Once I got those pieces of evidence, I decided that it was enough, so I talked to my wife. That day, my parents were taking care of our daughter, so it was only me and my wife at home. When I told my wife that I would send our daughter to my parents' house, she immediately sent a message to that bastard, saying that she wanted to meet him that night and make up an excuse for me. So I made sure that I took a screenshot of that chat, and I patiently waited for the night to come. Then, around 7 o'clock, my wife said,
I forgot that there is a parents' association meeting. I'll head to the meeting now, okay? I won't mind it if you go to bed before me.
Okay, I understand. But before you go, there's something I need to tell you.
What? That can wait until I get home tomorrow, right? I need to go now or else I'll be late.
Alright then, in that case, I'll just send them a message through email that you'll be late. The moment I uttered those words, my wife froze.
What are you saying? I told you I'm going to attend the Parents Association meeting.
I'm sorry to say this, but I already know where you're going and who you're meeting. You're going to the Scott Hotel with Prick, right? While I said that, I took out the printed screenshots of their messages, and I scattered them to the floor.
What? Why? I'm sure I deleted those messages.
Yes, that's right. You did delete the messages you had with that bastard. But email is different from your previous messaging app in a way that I can log into the account if I type in the ID. Also, I get notified whenever you receive a message.
Unbelievable! You tricked me!
Tricked you? That's my line! You're the one who tricked me! You promised not to contact him anymore, but you broke your promise! You then secretly contacted him and cheated on me again! You even deleted every conversation you had with him! Do you still think that I'm at fault, or do you admit to your own mistake? After I said those words, my wife went silent and looked down in shame. With all that said, you know what I'm going to do next, right?
Huh? What do you mean?
What do you mean, what do I mean? We're getting a divorce, so I'll go report to your parents about what you did. And I'll also contact Prick, because from his wife's perspective, it would mean that she was betrayed by both you and her husband.
Wait a second! I don't want to get a divorce, so please don't tell my parents about this! Please don't tell his wife as well. If you do that, I can't go to the kindergarten anymore!
There's no need for you to worry about that, you know. Because after we get divorced, I'll go back to my parents' house. I'm planning to move our daughter to another school.
No, I don't want that to happen! I will never allow you to divorce me!
What you want doesn't matter anymore after everything you did to me. I gave you a chance. 2 chances. But you brazenly broke your promise. Frankly speaking, I don't know what to do with you anymore. You've done too much damage. You can't talk your way out of divorce. My wife clung to me and begged me to stay. But I'm not kind enough to forgive a woman who cheated on me not once, but twice. So I called my parents-in-law immediately, and I told them everything that my wife did to me, including the affair she had with one of the parents at the kindergarten. And I also told them that I had pieces of evidence of the affair. My wife finally broke down in tears and fell to the floor. I wasn't sure, though, whether it was because of her fear that her parents knew about what she did, or maybe because it finally dawned on her that she would be alone from now on. I also heard my mother-in-law's voice falter, and her sobbing. I thought from the bottom of my heart that in this situation, my mother-in-law was more heartbroken than my wife. But hearing my wife cry at that time, I didn't feel a sting in my heart anymore, because I finally didn't care anymore. After that, I also contacted that bastard prick. He wasn't a stranger to me, so I was able to easily call him. I also had the option of assaulting him in his house, but I was aware that his children were in the house, so of course I didn't do that. That's why I chose the option to send a certification of contents. Immediately after that, my wife received a message. Prick had 3 children, and his wife was a few years older than him. I heard that when his wife found out about the affair, they had a huge fight in the house. Well, of course the fight was expected, because he cheated on her with one of the mothers at kindergarten. My wife and his wife met several times, and they had chatted, so I was sure his wife also found it hard to believe at first. Prick's wife came from a wealthy family, so they were able to buy an expensive condominium, and they lived a comfortable lifestyle. But he was driven out of the house the very next day. I then demanded quite a high amount of alimony to both Prick and my wife. My wife persistently complained and begged me not to divorce her, but my parents-in-law came to the rescue and picked up their daughter. My mother-in-law, filled with rage, slapped my wife hard and shouted,
"Take responsibility for what you did!"
My wife finally signed the divorce papers only after my mother-in-law scolded her. My wife, who lived a very comfortable life after marrying me, probably never thought about the worst that could happen if I found out about her affair. I can't believe I married that idiot. After that, I canceled the house contract and went back to my parents' house. As for my ex-wife and that bastard, they couldn't pay the alimony in one lump sum. So now she works non-stop, from working at the convenience store early in the morning to cleaner jobs until late at night. I told my wife that she's not allowed to see our daughter anymore, but the same is true for that bastard. His wife strictly forbids him to go see their children ever again. I don't know what it's like to cheat on their partner when they have children, and I don't want to know what it feels like at all. But I think those two got exactly what they deserved.
My name is Michelle. I live with my husband Michael and our baby daughter Kelly. We were a happy family of 3 except for my mother-in-law who lived nearby in a separate house and went around spreading awful rumors to our neighbors. It was such a pain, I couldn't even stand it. For example, she would say things like, "It seems that my daughter-in-law isn't very good at cooking, and I'm just so worried now that I have a grandchild, whether she's going to be able to eat any proper meals. And apparently she doesn't like to clean up their room. It's a disaster. So if the child develops allergies, I'm so worried about her health. And the way that she hangs up the laundry is it's so messy. But if I say something, she's only gonna get angry and take it out on me, right?" That was only scratching the surface, and she was telling all her friends as well as all of the neighbors at any of the lessons she was going to around the neighborhood, making up stories about my incompetence and temper. She was saying it like I was a wife that didn't do any of the chores around the house and didn't take care of my newborn daughter. Because of that, I was getting glared at by neighbors everywhere I went. And one day, a group of women from my mother-in-law's generation came up to my doorstep and told me that they would teach me how to do chores properly. It was a huge pain, and it isolated me in the neighborhood as well. For the record, I definitely did all of the chores around the house, and I was extremely careful with my daughter, especially when it came to cooking. I was confident because I even had a certification to teach cooking, and my husband always said that my cooking was delicious and seemed to enjoy the meals I made. I don't mean to brag, but even from a nutrition perspective, I know that I calculate the nutrition of every meal more than the average housewife, without ever using a processed ingredients. And all my baby food for my daughter is homemade and stored in a freezer for safety. It's not like I'm completely perfect at cleaning, but because Michael was always good at doing the chores around the house, I wouldn't have to say anything, and he would already have the laundry hanging outside, or he would proactively help me with cleaning around the house. He really was the most supportive husband and father. He said that he wanted the floors to be clean for when the baby starts to crawl around. So he was always cleaning our house, and thanks to him, it was always spotless. And my mother-in-law, who was always barging into our house unannounced, should know better than anybody, but I guess she just had to tear me down to feel better about herself. That's why whenever our neighbors came over to my house in regards to the rumors they heard, this is what I said. It seems that my mother-in-law gets uncomfortable if it's not exactly the way she does it. Even the arrangement of spices in my kitchen, if it's not exactly the way she likes it, then she gets upset. I can never seem to please her standards. And so I try to reply to make it seem like my mother-in-law is the one in the wrong. Even when she wanted to rearrange the spices, she said, "Why is it placed here like this? It's so difficult to use. Oh, but it's because you, Michelle. I guess there's nothing I can do." And she says it in this way that it's extremely disappointed, and it was obvious that she was trying to harass me. But it's not like my mother-in-law was cooking at our house in the first place, and she doesn't even live with us. So sometimes I try to tell her that as long as I can use it, then there shouldn't be any problems. It wasn't her house or kitchen at all. Of course, my husband had heard me tell him these things multiple times, and he tried to talk to his mother about it on multiple occasions.
Quit saying things like Michelle's cooking isn't delicious, especially when everything that she makes is way better than anything you've ever cooked!
And he wasn't just saying that. He just told me that his mother's cooking wasn't actually that good at all. He said that all of her cooking was over-salted and impossible to eat, but whenever I cook, I really try to preserve the natural flavors. And it's not tasteless, but it also is not too salty. And I try to really manage the balance of flavors with every meal as well. Also, being mindful of the nutritional value, and thankfully my husband really likes those flavors. Our baby does as well, and loved the food that I gave her. Previously, when my mother-in-law said that my cooking was terrible and said she couldn't let her granddaughter eat such tasteless things, she made some kind of baby food that was extremely thick and colorful. I felt like I had no choice but to feed it to Kelly, but as soon as she put it in her mouth, she started spitting it out and crying. And I can imagine that only irritated my mother-in-law more, especially after she was told by her own son that my cooking was better than hers. That's why I didn't like my mother-in-law. But I wanted to be cordial, and I would always be polite to her and greet her. But after that, I would just give short answers and ignore her. Then one year, we went to Michael's family's house for a public holiday. When I was in the kitchen, and his mom said this to me. "You hate me, don't you, Michelle? You want me to die, don't you?" She said that with a grin on her face, and she asked me over and over again, why would she say that with a grin on her face? I thought as I listened in silence, but because my mother-in-law was always saying nonsense like this in a roundabout way, I decided not to reply and I tried to avoid the question. However, after she kept repeating the question with a number of times, I saw something poking out of her jacket pocket. When I looked closely, I could see that it was a voice recorder. It was the same as the one my husband used for work, but in different color, so I was able to identify what kind of device it was immediately. When I saw that, I knew that she was trying to record me and then use it against me to spread false rumors about me. I was extremely irritated, but after that, for some reason, I started to laugh. And that's why the next time she asked me, I grabbed my mother-in-law and I pulled out the voice recorder from her jacket pocket. Well, that's terrible. Even though I've been considering living with you, and in order to give back my gratitude to you all these years that you've been so good to me, I will be sure to look after you at every moment until your last. You're getting a bit older now, so don't you think it's better for you to move soon? And we can live together as a happy family. As I said that, I waved the voice recorder in her face. When my mother-in-law realized that I had noticed the voice recorder, she turned pale. This isn't what it looks like! What? What do you mean? Aren't you trying to make me say something and then record it and then use it against me negatively? No, you're wrong! As she said that, my mother-in-law ran away from me. As I was saying it, I started to really enjoy myself and naturally, I started to smile. I can only imagine that that was the most terrifying face for her to see. But if she was going to try to record me again in an inconvenient time, I decided to take control and chase after her to make sure she never does it again. Why are you avoiding me? Do you hate me that much? I kept the voice recorder in plain view as I chased her with a smile on my face. As we were leaving, I pulled out the voice recorder again and I handed it to my mother-in-law, telling her that she forgot something. My mother-in-law was flustered as she thanked me and fell silent. She stood there pale. I'm sure my mother-in-law was trying to use the voice recorder to bring me down in some way that she could, but instead, she was the one being cornered about it. And it was so careless of her. She was pathetic. When we got home that night, I told Michael about how his mother had been carrying the voice recorder and what happened in the kitchen with her. When he heard this, he was furious. He barged back into his parents' house, yelling at his mother that he was trying to use things to bring people down is not what family does to each other. He then banned her from coming anywhere near our house. When his father heard about that, he suddenly became furious.
What on earth were you planning on doing after recording our daughter-in-law, huh? Why don't you explain yourself?
Nothing.
Nothing? Well then, why don't you tell us why you were holding a voice recorder? And I heard that you were purposely trying to get Michelle to say something that would put her at a disadvantage!
I'm sorry! Michael told me that she got down on her knees and was apologizing to him and his father. First of all, I really wanted to ask why she would do something like that in the first place, but apparently my mother-in-law was bored lately and she was surfing the internet. And then, that was when she read a story about a mother who had been harassed by her daughter-in-law and used a voice recorder and was able to take the daughter-in-law to court. Apparently, that gave her the idea, so she went out of her way to go and purchase a voice recorder and tried to get me to say something that would make me look bad. And then she was going to try to show it to Michael and his father and tell them that I was a bad person, so that Michael would divorce me and that she would be able to take her son and her grandchild back. This was all part of her plan to isolate me from everybody and destroy my life. But in the end, Michael's father's anger didn't simmer, and both he and Michael said that they had no intention of letting her see her grandchild anytime soon. Anytime my father-in-law wants to see his grandchild, he is allowed to our home. And apparently, he uses a voice recorder to record his time with Kelly and only lets his wife listen to that. I really am grateful to my husband and father for being so supportive. After that, she no longer barged into our house anymore, and I'm sure she's going to stop spreading such awful rumors about me as well. If she hates me that much, then she could have said that to my face from the very beginning, and I would have at least been able to fight face to face. It could have been settled down between the two of us instead of spreading across the entire neighborhood, but she did this to herself. For the record, I wasn't trying to get revenge on her, but as they say, an eye for an eye. When I told the neighbors about when my mother-in-law tried to use a voice recorder to get me to say such misleading information, it spread like wildfire through the gossiping housewives in the neighborhood. Thanks to that, my mother-in-law's reputation only went down, and on the other hand, my reputation was recovered, and people realized that she was lying all these years about my abilities as a wife and mother. I'm sure now in the neighborhood, she would probably be the one receiving the end of all the glares. She is also still banned from entering our house, and her husband hasn't forgiven her yet. I'm sure she's going to be spending the foreseeable future paying for everything she did to me and tried to do to me. My name is Jessica Morrison. At home, there's something I really love more than anything in the world, and that's my beloved dog, Randy. Well, I suppose it would be more correct to say that there is something I love more than anything in the world, because Randy recently passed away. When I first met my fiancé, Henry, the first thing I did was to make sure that he liked dogs. And then, when he proposed to me, I had one condition, and that was that I wanted him to first try living with my beloved Randy to make sure that they would get along. Henry also loved dogs, so he was happy to do so, and he moved in with me and Randy. And then, about a year and a half later, the two of us and my one dog were living happily together as a family of 3. Life was great, but by that time, Randy was already old. When he passed away peacefully in his sleep due to his old age.
Jessica, just remember how happy Randy was, and what a great life he had. I mean, just look at that. Look at his peaceful face. He looks like he's in the middle of a happy dream, and I'm sure he's jumping around up there already.
It was just as Henry said. When I looked at Randy, after he took his last breath, he looked very peaceful, almost like he was sunbathing, which was his favorite afternoon activity. But even still, I couldn't take Randy for walks anymore, and when I come home, he won't be in the front door to greet me anymore. When I thought about that, the tears wouldn't stop. I'm going to miss him more than any words can ever say. Thanks. I'm sure he was happy. Thanks for loving him too.
I know, Jessica.
Randy was kind and stayed at my side, and he let me cry on his shoulder for days. Randy was just like me. Back at my family home, there was no place for us. We were outcasts. Randy was originally the dog that my older sister Karen insisted on getting. However, even though she insisted to our parents that she would look after Randy and force him to get him, after 3 days she had completely stopped giving Randy any attention, and even feeding him his meals. Of course, that meant that she wasn't taking care of him on his walks either. That was when I took over, and I was the one that started looking after Randy. My parents never paid much attention to me, and they were never affectionate towards me to begin with. I felt like I never had a place in my family, and that's why I felt like Randy and I were my true family. When Randy passed away, I was devastated, and I couldn't get out of bed for most days, and that was when my husband Henry made the suggestion.
Hey, why don't we have a pet funeral for Randy?
A pet funeral? What do you mean?
A funeral for our pet. I've heard of people doing it lately. There's even a funeral home for pets specifically for the occasion. Unlike the usual cremation of a pet, they have a whole ceremony for it, so that you can really bid farewell. and then you can take the bones home with you.
A funeral for Randy? To me, Randy was my family. When I heard that I'd be able to have a funeral to honor him and properly bid him farewell, I decided that I was going to do that. Apparently, when you go to a regular crematory for pets, they say that it's more likely they're burning the body instead of more proper cremation process. They won't let you take home the bones with you. And they say that you don't get to really bid farewell to the pets, that they just take it in back for the process. When I imagine what Henry was telling me, it sent chills down my spine. I could never do that to my dear Randy. So I need to make sure that I have a proper funeral for Randy and give him a send-off that he deserves. Henry, will you please let us have a funeral for Randy? Please.
Of course. Leave it to me.
And so, the day of Randy's funeral, Henry and I arrived to the funeral home that was also used for funeral for humans as well. Even though they call it a pet funeral, there weren't many customs in regard to it. Unlike a regular funeral, there is no strict dress code, nor were there any customs to follow. However, the ceremony was being held at a funeral home that was also used for humans, so of course it was given that most appropriate clothing for the occasion would be funeral clothing, or some attire that would be in line with that. And when we arrived at the funeral home, almost all of the people there, regardless whether it was Randy's funeral or for another funeral, were all dressed in the same way. And since Henry and I both accepted Randy was a previous member of our family, it was a no-brainer for us to be in proper funeral attire for the occasion. When I arrived at the funeral home and gave Randy's favorite toys and some of his photos as offerings to the deceased, tears started overflowing and streaming down my face. This was going to be my final farewell to Randy, and it was extremely emotional for me. However, right at that moment, I heard a high-pitched voice of a woman that didn't sound appropriate for a funeral home at all.
Oh, there you are. So this is where you're doing the whole thing. I guess the pet ones are held in a different area. Well, I guess that's a given, but whatever.
When I turned around at a familiar voice, standing there was my older sister Karen and her husband. When the two of them arrived so suddenly, I was taken aback and didn't know what to do. Because Randy was originally bought from my older sister, and it was also her pet's funeral. I did tell her about it because I felt obligated, but I didn't expect her to actually show up. And she lost all interest in Randy. She never took a single walk, nor did she ever feed him, and so I thought it was strange. But then when my sister and husband came closer, and I saw that the way they were dressed, I was shocked. What is she wearing? What is that coat? Karen was wearing a coat. To be fair, it was starting to become a little bit chilly outside, so it wasn't strange to be wearing a coat for this time of year. But the problem with it was the design of the coat. As if she was playing a horrible, terrible prank, Karen's coat was a fur coat, and not only that, the design of the fur was exactly the same colors as Randy's coat.
Oh, did you notice? Do you know how expensive this coat was? It's a real fur, so it's super expensive.
My sister noticed where my gaze was. She suddenly started twirling around to show it off as a coat. But why a coat like that?
Maybe it was rude for me to wear a coat at a funeral. Well, whatever, let me take it off.
When my sister took off the fur coat, underneath she revealed a bright white dress. To say that it went right along with her thick makeup and overbearing perfume was an understatement. Everything about her from head to toe was obviously inappropriate for a funeral home. My husband and I stood there shocked at a loss for words, when my sister started laughing as if to rub it in our faces.
But seriously, I can't believe that you would do something this ridiculous for such a dirty little stray dog like Randy. There must be something wrong with you, but I guess you've always been a weird one, Jessica.
I know, right? This is crazy.
Standing next to Karen, her husband agreed with her and laughed. And even the way he was dressed, even though it was less outrageous compared to Karen, it was completely out of the place. He was wearing a Hawaiian short-sleeved button-up shirt, as if he was going to a tropical holiday. But why are you both dressed like that? I was forcing out the words as I asked them, but then Karen and her husband turned to each other as if they made eye contact, and they started laughing.
Jessica, your face is bright red. It's hard to take anything you say seriously when you're somebody that makes such a big deal out of one little dog dying. But you know, isn't it any human being's free choice to wear whatever they want at a dog's funeral? Why should it matter what I wear? It's not a real funeral anyway.
My sister didn't even try to hide the fact that she was making fun of the ceremony. But that was when Henry spoke up and fought back.
That's not true. This is a funeral home that's also used for ceremonies for deceased humans. See? Have a look over there.
When Henry pointed in the other direction, there was an older couple standing there who looked like they were at a separate funeral.
There are other funerals being held here today, and the way that you were dressed would make anybody that's here to attend a funeral uncomfortable. And that's why a white dress like that and a Hawaiian shirt like that are inappropriate for a place like this.
What? Well then, are you telling me that that's written in the law? I mean, a pet funeral is just for someone that has nothing better to do with their lives anyway, isn't it? It's a waste of time.
Karen, that's not a waste of time. How can you say that? That was when I exploded, and without even thinking, I had raised my voice. Today is the funeral of my family, my precious family that I truly love. And we don't need anyone who's going to show up in a white dress or in a Hawaiian shirt to be here at a time like this. And on top of that, I can't believe that you wore a coat with the exact same fur as Randy as if to rub it in the wound. Get out.
As usual, looks like you haven't changed, Jessica. You've always been so sensitive and you're such a crybaby and a do-gooder. Well, whatever. I gotta laugh more than I thought I would today anyway, so I guess I can leave. You should be grateful to me, you know. Enjoy your little pet funeral.
Karen and her husband started laughing again, and they danced their way out of the funeral home. I couldn't believe it. That was when the older couple, who had been watching the entire time, came over to Henry and me. What terrible people they were. I do hope that you don't take any of it to heart. Yes, thank you very much for your kindness. At the time, we only spoke briefly before we both went our separate ways, but that was when the most unexpected turn of events had started to begin. It turned out that out of pure coincidence, that some kind of fate, the older couple was actually the CEO and wife of the most important client company of the company where Karen's husband was working. Because Karen and her husband were so focused on making fun of us at the funeral home, that even when they pointed towards them, he didn't notice who they were. But of course, the CEO recognized the employee, and the story about his disgraceful behavior and his terrible wife quickly spread throughout the company. Because it was so difficult for him to stay at the company after being isolated, he ended up resigning. However, rumors are already spread throughout the whole industry, and all of the companies denied his job applications. That was when my sister came crying to my door for help. Our parents had already passed away, and I could only imagine that with her personality, she was pretty much shunned by her husband's parents, and they didn't have any contact with them. So there was probably nobody else that she could turn to besides me.
Hey, Jessica, please! My husband isn't able to find a new job yet, and we don't have enough to pay our bills for any living expenses. So can you please give us $1,000 a month? No, I'll even take $500 a month, but please just give it to me!
Don't be ridiculous. Why should I give you any money?
But why not? I looked into it, but I heard that just to burn a dog like that funeral home only took a couple $1,000s from you, right? If you have the money to spend on some stupid little dog, then you could be some use helping your older sister. Isn't that right? Am I wrong? Am I wrong for telling you that you should be helping your real family?
For some reason, now Karen was the one yelling at me, but I remained calm and to answer her. Yes, you are wrong, because you should know that not once in my real life that I ever thought of you as my real family anyway. Randy was the only real family that I had, to me and to you. And that's why spending a couple $1,000s on him is nothing to us compared to the love that he gave us over the years. However, before I continued, I glared directly into Karen's eyes. However, for someone like you who can't understand the pain of what someone is going through, and instead tries to make a joke out of their tragedy, I would never even give $1. No, not even 1 cent to you. That's right, never. My sister probably wasn't expecting me to come out so strong, that she was overpowered and sulked out the door. Then, the next day, this time, my sister came back to my house with her husband, and they immediately got down on their knees to apologize to me.
Please, we beg you! Is there any way that you can please support us so that we can survive? I heard from my wife that you're an extremely kind person, Miss Jessica, and that you have a heart of gold. When I saw that you were hosting a funeral for your pet, deep down inside, I felt like my heart was grabbed by the kindness and pureness of your heart. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I really felt the same way too, so please, Jessica, help us out!
My sister had been looking down the entire time, and when she looked up at me, there was little specks of glistening drops falling down her cheeks. But at the same time, I looked down at her hand, and I noticed that she was holding on some bottle of eye drops. If you really have the ability to prepare a little prop for your trade like some eye drops, then it looks like you're probably doing fine. I refuse to help you in any way.
Damn it! This isn't what you said, Karen! You said that Jessica's weak, so if you cried a little bit, we got down on her knees, that we would be able to pull some money out of her, didn't you? And yet your fake crying didn't even work! She saw right through you! What the hell?
Excuse me? Oh, please, you're the one to talk, but nothing else you couldn't come up with any better plan anyway.
Karen and her husband started to get into a disgraceful fight in front of my door, but all I could do was smile and say one last thing. Please, get out already. Leave. After I kicked my sister and her husband out the front door, I remember one last thing and said, "Oh, that reminds me. Hey, Karen." When I said that, Karen's face brightened in an instant.
Wait a minute. Are you gonna help us? You're best. Thank you.
Nope, as if. I thought that I should just probably tell you this, but...
Huh?
Because I am your biological sister, don't worry. I will be sure to show my face at your funeral when the time comes. And of course, at the ceremony, I'll be wearing proper funeral clothing. Perhaps because she had gotten her hopes up for a brief moment, it seemed like Karen had finally lost all will as she crumbled down on the floor, and she started to cry for real this time. My name is Kelly. I live happily with my husband Michael and our daughter Ashley. One day when I was taking a bath and washing my body, I felt something hard against my hand from my own body, and it raised a red flag. Is this a lump? Wait, could it be? But no way! Me? I didn't want to believe it, so I spent the next few days touching the lump on my chest, but it was definitely there. That was when I told my husband about it, and his response was,
You need to go to the hospital immediately and get that checked out. Go tomorrow, Kelly.
And so the next day, I went straight to the hospital for a test. Unfortunately, the bad feeling I had came true, and I was told by the doctors that I did have to face breast cancer. When I found out that I had cancer, I was devastated, and I felt like everything in front of me went dark. I was blindsided. At that time, my daughter was only 5 years old, and the most precious thing in the world to me. When I thought about that I might die from cancer and potentially leave her to grow up without a mother, I was so scared that I couldn't bear the thought. To be honest, I was so shocked that day that I don't remember anything that the doctors told me after I received my diagnosis. When I got home and spoke to my husband about it, I was so sad and I started to cry. I didn't know what it was about to happen to me or my body. I was so terrified of the treatment and of the future, and I dumped all of my feelings onto my husband. My husband Michael just sat there and slowly listened to my words and warmly took them in.
It's going to be okay. I'm going to go with you, and I'll be by your side the whole time. So let's do this together and treat it as we go.
And he took my hand. I was saved by my husband's kind words, and I was given the courage to face the cancer with the strength of my family behind me. During that time, my mother-in-law found out that I had cancer, and she went out of her way to barge into my house. As soon as she walked in, she turned to me and said, Interesting, so you're gonna die. Well then, for my sweet son, I'm gonna find somebody better for him so you can relax and rest in peace, okay? She said, grinning from ear to ear. Her words were so unbelievably horrible, I was shocked and couldn't respond. But my husband was sitting next to me and listening, and he was furious.
How can you say that to my wife when she just found out that she's sick? Are you kidding me? Our family is going to beat this cancer together, so you better watch. Now leave!
And he kicked her out. After that, my husband was careful to make sure that I wouldn't have to see his mother anymore. And from there, I returned to the hospital, but this time my husband and I decided to hear more details about the treatment options. Fortunately, we found out that my cancer was still able to be removed through surgery, so we decided to carry on with the surgery. And then, as soon as I was done with the surgery, my husband and my daughter came to the hospital room to visit me.
Are you okay? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm fine, but I don't have a chest anymore, you know?
You don't need to worry about that, Kelly. I'm just happy that you're still alive like this. That's all I need.
Mommy, are you okay? Does it hurt anywhere?
Mommy is okay. If you just can wait at home with Daddy for a little bit longer, I'll be home soon.
Okay, I love you, Mommy.
Surrounded by amazing people, my husband and daughter, I was grateful that I was still alive and grateful for my family. But suddenly my mother-in-law showed up at the hospital room. My husband quickly turned to him and yelled at her.
What are you doing here? Get out!
Oh dear, I only came here to give you my best wishes, but even still, I can't believe you don't have a chest anymore. I feel sorry for my granddaughter, and for you too, sweetie.
How old do you think my daughter is right now? She's not the age where she's breastfeeding anymore. And why would you say that you feel sorry for me?
Because isn't it obvious? If she doesn't have boobs, then that means she's not a woman anymore. Ha ha ha. I lay there listening in silence while my husband continued to yell at his mother for me.
What? Of course she's still a woman! Apologize to Kelly right now! What are you saying? This is ridiculous!
Oh my, I don't know how you cast such a spell on my sweet son to defend you like this. All I did was speak the truth, that's all.
What do you mean? You know that this surgery was a necessity in order to treat Kelly's cancer, right? Do you have any idea what a miracle it is that she's still alive?
But it's the fact that she doesn't have a chest anymore, isn't it? While my husband was becoming furious, I had been listening to my mother-in-law's words, and perhaps because of the medicine that had just come into my surgery, my mind was in a daze. So without thinking, I blurted out, Yeah, I understand. So if you're going to tell me that I'm not a woman anymore, now that you don't get your period, I guess that means that you're not a woman either. That makes sense. The words fell out of my mouth, but immediately I realized how rude it was, and I apologized to my husband, but he replied,
It's fine. She's the one who said something so rude to begin with. That's a given that you should talk back to her.
And he defended me. I had never said anything like that to my mother-in-law before, so I was even shocked myself. Perhaps I hit right where it hurts because my mother-in-law started to shake and raised her voice. What the hell? Even though you don't have a chest anymore, who do you think you are? She started yelling nonsense and stormed out of the room. My husband then turned to me and apologized.
I really am sorry. I'll make sure she never comes to our house again, and you can block all of my mom's phone calls. She's the worst kind of human.
When he said that, I was able to relax, but then, standing next to him, my daughter had tears in her eyes.
So if I don't have a chest, that means I'm not a girl? But I'm a girl, I'm not a boy. I don't want to be a boy.
And she started breaking down in tears. Both my husband and I were surprised and were desperately trying to cheer her up.
That's right, Ashley, you're a girl, so you don't need to worry about anything.
That's right. And you're the cutest girl in the world. Your grandma's a liar, so you can just forget anything that she said. Don't listen to her.
It seems that Ashley had heard Michael's mother say that if you don't have a chest, you're not a woman, and because she's still in preschool and didn't have a chest, she thought it meant that she's not a girl either. After that, my husband and I tried to tell Ashley that she was a girl, but it seemed like my mother-in-law's words left a strong impression on her. After this incident, even though my daughter never liked my mother-in-law that much to begin with, it made her hate her grandma. After my surgery was a success, I spent a couple of days recovering in the hospital, and a couple of weeks later, I was safely discharged. At this time, it wasn't the norm to have breast implant surgery done at the same time as the breast mastectomy for cancer, so I was left only with scars from the removal. After I went home, it made me sad to look at my chest in the mirror, but even then my husband stayed by my side every day, and more than anything, I was just happy that I was able to live alongside Ashley as she grows up. Even when I got home, Michael was kinder than ever. He was helping with the chores, with cleaning and laundry and cooking. My daughter was also trying to help me. Even though the recovery process was long after the surgery, I was able to live peacefully at home. However, my mother-in-law didn't change, and even though my husband yelled at her so much at the hospital, she tried to sneak behind my husband's back to send me horrible messages directly to my cell phone. However, after this, the most unimaginable turn of events was waiting for her. When word got around that I had breast cancer, one of my mother-in-law's friends insisted on getting tested. And when they went, it was discovered that she had breast cancer as well. Not only that, but she was left with no choice but to get a double mastectomy. When she found out that she had breast cancer herself, she couldn't believe it. I have breast cancer? This is a joke, right? Not me! Apparently, she was a complete loss for words. My mother-in-law was already quite old, and anytime she took a bath, she wasn't checking herself for lumps anywhere, so she had no idea. Luckily, I just happened to have a friend who was a nurse, and since she taught me how to check myself for breast cancer, I had been doing so for a long time. That's why I was able to discover it. The doctor says I was lucky I found it so early on. The doctor told Michael's mother that once they'd done the surgery, they would be able to get rid of the cancer cells, but my mother-in-law became so depressed that nobody could say anything to cheer her up. After making fun of me so much for saying that I wasn't a woman if I didn't have a chest, she ended up with the breast cancer herself, and not only that, but she wasn't going to lose one breast, but both of them. She must have not been able to imagine that she would end up on that side of the story. And then, even though my mother-in-law had sent me so many terrible messages, when she found out that she had breast cancer herself, perhaps she was so shocked that she completely stopped attacking me. In fact, she became so depressed that she had to receive psychiatric treatment as well. She was about to be hospitalized for some time, and after the surgery, she was going to lose her breast. Not just one, but both of them. I was hurt for years by the horrible words of my mother-in-law, and if I wanted to, I could have said those words that she said right back to her. But if I did that, it would make me drop down to her level, so I chose not to say anything directly to her. But deep down inside, I couldn't help but feel like it was karma that she was getting what she deserved. When I was at rock bottom, to be told such awful words, she couldn't possibly have imagined how much it hurt me. I felt like I was being redeemed for all the pain she caused me. She was making fun of me so much for not being a woman if I didn't have a chest, but I'm sure that she never dreamt of the same thing was going to happen to her. And if I'm going to rub more salt into the wound, she didn't have anybody by her side, and she didn't have anyone to fight the cancer with her or support her through the treatments. She was going to face the cancer alone, and I could only imagine how terrifying that would be. But my mother-in-law probably doesn't know how much strength and warmth and kindness family can be, because she doesn't know how to give that love to her own family. I'm sure she's about to find out just how awful the words she was saying to me back then were, and she'll regret them for the rest of her life.
My name is Natalie. I am a full-time housewife living together with my husband, Ryan. My husband's childhood home is within driving distance from our house, so we visited his parents quite frequently after we got married. However, I did not like going out to eat with them. That is because my mother-in-law always speaks ill of me when no one is around, especially when it comes to my looks. She says things like, "You have a very plain face. Apply some makeup for heaven's sake." Every time she makes a comment like that, I was hurt. Actually, I used to wear heavy makeup and gaudy clothes when I was younger. Whenever I apply makeup, it gives off a flashy impression. This is why after I got married, I started applying less makeup. The truth is that I have more confidence when I wear more makeup.
So I did think about wearing more makeup when meeting my mother-in-law, but I thought that if I wear too much makeup, I might not be able to leave a good impression on her. So I decided not to wear heavy makeup when I first met her. My mother-in-law had no idea about that, and she has never seen me with heavy makeup. This is why I get more and more frustrated every time I see her. One day I went out to eat with my parents-in-law.
Don't hesitate to eat a lot. There's plenty for everyone. Eat to your heart's content.
That's right, eat as much as you can. Then, when my husband and father-in-law were absorbed in their conversation, talking about what men talk about, my mother-in-law whispered in my ear, "What a shameful set you are. You don't need to eat tonight. I can't believe how you manage to live with that body. You gain more and more weight whenever I see you. You weigh too much. Eat less, for heaven's sake." I was very shocked by the words that came out of my mother-in-law's mouth. Seeing me look down and noticing the expression on my face changed, my husband became worried as he asked me,
Are you alright, Natalie? What's the matter? Do you feel sick?
It seems that she doesn't like the food.
Oh, don't you like Chinese food? I thought I remember you mentioning you love Chinese food.
Yes, I did mention that I love Chinese food because it's true.
You don't have to force yourself to eat, okay? Just eat what you can stomach. Which would you like to eat first? Should we order a different dish?
Thank you. Then when I arrived home after eating dinner with Ryan's parents, my body's batteries plummeted and I went kaput. I lay down on the sofa in the living room and I stayed there for about an hour until my husband carried me to the bedroom so I can take a proper rest.
Are you alright? Do you feel sick?
Yes, I'm alright. My body felt listless, but I thought that it was just mental fatigue, so I decided to sleep early that night. The day started pretty normal for me, but then I suddenly became ill and I had to be brought to the hospital. That's when I found out that I have a life-threatening disease. The doctor told me that I had to stay inpatient there at the hospital. When I was laying there in the hospital bed, I became extremely anxious and depressed. After work, my husband went straight to the hospital where I was admitted to, and he took care of me until late at night. The whole time I was in the hospital. My husband was a great support both emotionally and physically. Thanks to that, I was able to muster the courage to face the painful treatment. Then, a few days after I was brought to the hospital, my mother-in-law came to visit me by herself. I thought that she wouldn't say anything bad about me that day, especially since I was sick and powerless sitting on the hospital bed. But reality is a bitter truth. That is when I learned not to hope too much when it comes to my mother-in-law. The moment my mother-in-law walked into the room, she uttered something unbelievable. "You're still alive? I thought you were already gone. I hope you have a good insurance. You can't give birth to children anymore, right? In that case, there's no reason for you to be with my son anymore." Lost for words for her shocking greeting, I was silent for a moment. That was when my mother-in-law continued spitting out heinous words. "I was expecting to see you gone, but I guess I just wasted my time coming here." Hearing those heartless words, my jaw dropped. So I told my mother-in-law that I wasn't feeling well and drove her out. I then told my husband about what my mother-in-law had said to me, but my husband couldn't believe that his mother would say such words, so he told me that I might just have a bad dream, because my mind and body were weak at the moment. He just ignored what I told him at the time. With frustration and anger raging inside of me, I told myself that I would cure myself and recover completely by any means necessary. Because of that, I tried very hard to get my health back in shape. It was a preparation for the surgery so I can endure the treatment. I've had enough of my mother-in-law making my life miserable. I'm not going to let her this time around. 3 months later, I had finally had surgery and braved it. The procedure finally went without a hitch, and I was finally able to go home. Thankfully, I was steadily recovering. Then, when I was an outpatient, I asked the doctor about something that had been bothering me for quite a while now. "Doctor, will I be able to have children?" "Yes, it might be a great deal of physical strength for your current body condition, but you can do it if you just continue trying and never give up." "Doctor, really? Thank you so much. What a huge relief." With hopes that I might be able to have children, I steadily recovered little by little. Then after a while, I was finally able to go back to my daily life. I received a call that I would be eating out with my parents-in-law. While I was in the hospital, all I could think about was getting my revenge on my mother-in-law when I was getting discharged from the hospital. My husband was working that day, so we decided to meet at the restaurant after work. I had plenty of time to get ready, so I applied heavy makeup and set up my hair, just like the way I used to do it when I was younger. But it got a bit slimmer because of the illness. So I think I look better now in the dress, with hair and makeup. I then wore an outfit that was in vogue. I felt more confident and braver than ever to face everything in my way head-on, for the first time in a long time. While I was walking downtown, the 3 guys I walked past hit on me 3 times. That made me more confident, so I was in a better mood. When I walked inside the restaurant, when I arrived at my seat, my husband and my parents-in-law were already sat and ordered food. "I'm sorry to keep you waiting." Who are you?" Mother-in-law, what are you saying? It's me! My mother-in-law was at a loss for words when I said that. Once I had everyone's attention, I decided to execute my plan right away. More importantly, when you told me that you were surprised that I was still alive, I was very shocked that I was at a loss for words. But thanks to that, I was able to recover quickly, because I got motivated to get well no matter what. Hearing what I said, my husband and my father-in-law looked shocked and then stared in the direction of where my mother-in-law was sitting. What are you saying? I never said such a thing! How dare you accuse me? You should be ashamed of yourself! Of course you did. There's no way I misheard it. She told me there's no point in me being with Ryan if I can't have birth to babies. You've got to be kidding me. There's no way I would say such a thing. I mean, you've been making fun of me, calling me ugly and fat, right? Do you remember that? No, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't remember any of that. While I was fighting my mother-in-law about who said what, my mother-in-law finally said something that gave her away. Get a hold of yourself! I didn't say those words to help you! I really wish you were gone! That moment, I made a triumphant pose in my head. Then my husband and father-in-law became furious at my mother-in-law. There was nothing she could say to defend herself, so she cast eyes down awkwardly.
I can't believe that you were the type of person who would say such things! I misjudged you! Unbelievable! I can't believe that you hurt Natalie! I will never forgive you!
Then, just when I thought my mother-in-law stood up, she ran away and escaped from the scene. After that, my husband and father-in-law apologized to me on her behalf. Even after we arrived at home, my husband apologized to me over and over again. He then told me that I didn't have to engage with my mother-in-law anymore. He finally knows the truth about how his mother treats me, and he understands that my mother-in-law stresses me out. My husband then explained that he assumed that I had just had a bad dream, because I was ill and my body and mind were weak at the hospital. He also explained that he couldn't believe that his own mother who gave birth to him would say such cruel words to the woman he loves. I think that I would have thought the same thing if I was in his shoes. Because of that, I decided to forgive my husband for not believing in me right away. It's rare that one's mother turns into a monster overnight. After that, I finally got pregnant after we tried and failed several times. 2 years after I got discharged from the hospital, I gave birth to a healthy baby, our very first child. We've been waiting for this baby since the day we got married, so my husband and I were of course overjoyed, as well as my parents and my father-in-law. But as for my mother-in-law, she wanted to see her grandchild too, but my husband completely shut her out, so she could never come close to our baby. She was very persistent in seeing her grandchild, but after we finally let go of her, she called on the phone to apologize to me. Natalie, I'm sorry. I promise to never say anything bad about you anymore. So please, I beg you, Natalie. I want to see my grandchild. You know how much I've been waiting to have a grandchild. I know that because you keep on telling me. But didn't you say at the hospital that there's no point in me being with your son if I don't give birth to a child, remember? But now you've come crawling out to me when I finally give birth. That's too convenient for you. All you think about is yourself. You are so self-centered and a mean person. I want to cradle my grandchild in my arms. You have no idea how it feels to not be able to hold your grandchild in your arms. Please, Natalie, I beg you, please forgive me. My husband and I couldn't find in ourselves to forgive my mother-in-law, so we never allowed her to come close to our precious baby girl. Because of that, we ceased talking to her and we naturally drifted apart. My mother-in-law now lives a sad and depressing retired life without being able to see her grandchild. Well, if my daughter understood what she did, even our baby wouldn't want to see her. After that, since my father-in-law learned about my mother-in-law's true colors, only now, after being together for several decades and living under the same roof, he couldn't stand living together with her anymore. So he used his retirement savings to go on trips every once in a while. Thanks to that, my father-in-law is now healthier and looks more youthful. Apparently, he can't imagine living with her for the rest of his retired life, so he decided to use his savings and retirement money all for himself. As for my mother-in-law, she became dissatisfied with not having a father-in-law at home. So while my father-in-law was away on vacation, my mother-in-law left the house and never came back. My mother-in-law called Ryan several times, but he kept ignoring the calls. After a while, he received a long message from his mother. What's written was her resentment towards her son who abandoned her. My husband said that it's very creepy, so he deleted the messages without sending a reply. Rumors say that my mother-in-law is now living in a small, dinky apartment, alone and lonely by herself. My husband and I are now estranged from my mother-in-law, and we now live together happily with my father-in-law and our cute little baby. I want to continue taking care of my health so that I will never get ill again. I will also take good care of my family and prioritize my family's health. Health is wealth, after all. I hope to live a long, happy life with my beloved family.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.